let me just start by asking you a question. Can a completely still image move? I mean, it sounds kind of impossible, right? But what if I told you the answer has nothing to do with what's on your screen and everything to do with what's inside your own head?
Well, welcome. Today, we're diving deep into the wild world of psychedelic optical illusions. We're talking about simple, static patterns that can actually trigger some seriously powerful, reality-bending experiences. We're going to find out how these images can essentially hack your brain by exploiting some clever little glitches in your biological hardware.
Okay, so first things first, you've got to think of your brain as this incredible supercomputer. It is unbelievably powerful, but, and this is a big but, it's not perfect. To keep up with everything, it has to take shortcuts. Think about it. Every single second, there is a massive tidal wave of visual information flooding into your brain. It is just way too much data to analyze piece by piece. So what does your brain do? It cheats. It uses shortcuts, and it makes educated guesses to build your reality on the fly. And 99% of the time, this works flawlessly. But those shortcuts can be tricked. Certain patterns can hack those little loopholes. And that's when we get these amazing, mind-bending illusions. So let's get a little more specific. How does your brain actually build this visual world for you? Well, it's got these teams of super specialized neurons, and each of these little teams has one very specific job. And this is the absolute key to everything. You have one set of brain cells that only detects motion, some for things moving toward you, others for things moving away. You've got totally different neurons for color that work in opposing pairs, like red versus green. And then you have others just for things like brightness and contrast. So understanding that your brain has all these separate, specialized tools is how we can start to understand how to fool them. All right, let's start with maybe the most powerful hack of them all, tricking your sense of motion. This is where things get genuinely weird. We're talking about illusions that can actually change how you physically perceive the world, even just for a few moments. The effect can be so intense that you might literally feel like the world around you is starting to melt, or breathe, or warp. You know, you stare at an image, you look away, and all of a sudden the wall in front of you, or even your own hand, seems to be alive and moving. So what in the world is going on here? Well, it's a real phenomenon, and it's got a name, the Motion Aftereffect, or MAE for short. Basically, it's an illusion where you see movement in something that is perfectly still, right after you've been staring at something that is moving. But how does that even work?
This is so cool. Here's how it breaks down. Let's say you stare at a spiral that's constantly moving inward. The little neurons in your brain that detect inward motion are firing like crazy. After a minute or so, they just get tired out. They fatigue. So when you suddenly look away at something that's not moving, like the wall, those tired inward neurons are basically silent. But your outward motion neurons, they're totally fresh, they're rested, and they're ready to go. They overcompensate for the silence from the other team, creating this unbalanced signal that basically screams to your brain, hey, the wall is expanding, even though you know it isn't.
Okay, how about another classic? You have almost definitely seen the rotating snakes illusion before. It's a completely static picture, but the circles look like they're constantly spinning, especially when you move your eyes around. Now, this one works on a completely different but just as sneaky little brain glitch. And the secret here? It's all about timing. See, your brain processes changes in brightness at slightly different speeds. The jump from light gray to black gets processed a tiny bit faster than the jump from white to light gray. These teeny, tiny little timing errors happening all over the image get misinterpreted by your brain as motion. It's like a constant microscopic race is happening inside your visual cortex. And if you've ever stared at one of these for too long, you might have felt this yourself. All of that fake motion signal can create a real sense of sensory overload. It can actually make you feel a bit dizzy or lightheaded as your brain just struggles to process movement that isn't really happening.
Okay, so we've successfully hacked motion, but what about color? Well, it turns out your brain's color system has its own kind of reboot function that we can trigger with just a simple picture. Yeah, there are these incredible illusions where you stare at a weird inverted color negative of a photograph for a minute, then you look away at a blank white wall and bam, out of nowhere, you see this perfect full-color after image that honestly sometimes looks even more vivid than the real thing. It is a startlingly clear effect.
So the science behind this is something called the opponent process theory. Remember those specialized neurons? Well, for color, they work in pairs. You've got a blue-yellow system and a red-green system. So when you stare at a really green image, for example, your green receptors get tired out.
Then, when you look away, their opponents, the red receptors, rebound like crazy, and you see this vibrant red afterimage. Same thing happens with blue and yellow. The key thing to realize is that this isn't just your imagination. It's a real physiological reboot of your color receptors. And for a few seconds, it can cast this glowing halo on everything you look at, making the real world suddenly feel like it's being viewed through some kind of wild Technicolor filter. Now, before we finish up, we have to talk about something that's absolutely crucial, and that's safety. Because while these illusions are so fascinating because they mess with our neural pathways, that's also the exact reason we need to be careful. Seriously, take a look at this. These illusions work by intentionally overstimulating your brain. So if you have a history of migraines or vertigo or especially photosensitive epilepsy, please be extremely cautious with these kinds of images, or maybe just avoid them altogether. They can trigger very real and very unpleasant physical symptoms. And that really brings us to our final thought. These illusions, they're not just fun little tricks. They're powerful proof that what you perceive as objective reality, well, it's actually a reconstruction. It's a story being told to you by your beautiful, complex, but ultimately hackable brain. Which leaves us with a pretty deep question. If your brain can be tricked this easily by a simple pattern, what else are you not seeing?